So we're streaming now? Are we recording just now? Sweet. You're on, man. Someone might be here now. Yeah, I think that, well, is Kenny down the white car? Yeah, but that's Kenny. He has arrived.
Actually, here, David, you can scoot over. I'm going to sit back there. I wasn't sure if Kenny would be here or not. So you just sit over there and I'll sit back here.
It's true.
I'm going to be some kitchen this time.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and open up our study time here with prayer. And, I guess Kenny will shuffle in when he's ready. He's on his way. And then we'll wait a moment before we get in. In the meantime, there's been some really awesome blessings that I guess you guys would like to share your experiences with those that are watching via the screen. No?
Did you order that?
Just make a long story short. We had some people that received quite a blessing.
Well, I thought I'd come down here so I could tour with everybody.
Did you get any snow at your place? You're kidding. We got about an inch and a half.
Really?
Boy.
No, we got. I can't believe though we was getting blowing snow. I don't think we're gonna get anything.
Morning, Kenny. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
I thought I'd just come up here and listen to the preaching this morning.
Yeah.
Look at young people.
Alright, so let me stop the music and then we'll go ahead and there's a background noise. I'll get up.
Y'all go take turnabout?
No.
No.
She's reading the book today and I'm doing the talking.
Okay.
Alright, you ready? Okay. Lord, thank you so much for this day that you've allowed us to get together and to study your word. And as we read more and hear more about Mr. George Muller, we ask that we would receive a blessing from it and that we would be changed in some capacity to have more faith and more reliance on you at all times. And as we read in the study today as well about prayer and study that topic further, we ask that you would be with our study time, that you would lead us into truth and understanding, that you would open up our hearts and our minds to receive the information that you have for us today, and that it would be relevant to us in some way. These things we ask and pray in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
I guess you can take it over with reading the chapter of George Muller.
Okay, so as far as I know, we're on chapter 8, because that's what it was looking to.
The Breakfast Club?
Yeah, this chapter is called The Breakfast Club. Alright. Where will they all sit? Asked Mary Muller as she stood in her living room lifting the heavy iron to press one of her husband's collars. Lydia, a serious little 1-year-old toddler, scurried around her feet. I don't know, said George. I was thinking of asking the grocer if he had any apple boxes he could spare. Tipped on their side, they'd make good seats, don't you think? Mary nodded vaguely. I suppose so, she replied. You really are determined to do this, aren't you? Yes, replied George firmly. There are children out in the streets of Bristol who have never heard the name of God, have never set foot in a church, and have no reason on this earth to hope. I have to do what little I can to help them. Right now, the best I can do is invite them in for breakfast and read the scriptures to them. But how many do you think will show up? Do we have a limit on how many we can feed? Asked Mary Muller. Panic began to show on her face. How is all this going to work, George? We hardly have have enough breakfast for the 3 of us most of the time. If God is in this, he will supply, said George. And so the breakfast club began. Within a month of its start, 20 to 30 ragged children were gathered around the Mueller's steps each morning. At 8 o'clock, George invited them in. Mary greeted them at the door. A pitcher of warm water was waiting on the counter inside, and the children took turns washing their faces and hands. Then they took their seats on the apple boxes that were placed around the oak table in the parlor. Mary ladled out a large helping of oatmeal to each child, and then George said grace. The children ate noisily while Mary poured them cups of strong tea. While the children shuffled spoonfuls of sugar into the tea, George began the Bible lesson. Sometimes he would read a story aloud to them, acting out the various parts as he went. The popularity of the breakfast club grew, until a year later there was no room for even one more apple box in the Mueller's parlor. 40 people, not just children, showed up for breakfast every morning. Many adults needed food and Bible reading, and George knew there were hundreds, if not thousands, of other children in Bristol who needed a good breakfast and a Bible lesson. But he could not reach them all, at least not from the inside of his parlor. There had to be a way to do more, but how? For days George paced the floor. He had something on his mind, something that would not go away. It was a name, a long name, the Scriptural Knowledge Institution for Home and Abroad. George could picture exactly what it would be, an organization run by Christian men like him, an organization with three purposes: to establish a day schools, Sunday schools, and adult schools for the poor, provide Bibles for people who could not afford to buy them, and help foreign missionaries with financial gifts. To accomplish these goals, George decided the organization would never ask a non-Christian for money or allow such a person to sit on its board. Nor would it go into debt of any kind. The success of the organization would be judged not by how much money it raised, but rather how it spent what it had. With this all settled in his mind, George went to talk to Henry Craig. He agreed and followed George outlined. A meeting was announced for March 5th, 1834. About 100 people came to listen to the two pastors as they outlined their idea for the Scriptural Knowledge Institution for Home and Abroad. Many people thought it was too bold, too far-fetched to ever become a reality. 2 weeks later, on March 19th, Mary Mueller gave birth to their second child, a son whom they named Elijah. Of course, the new arrival stretched the Mueller's finances, and by April, George had become very frustrated. Despite the public meeting and the hours George had spent praying and planning with Henry Craig, the Scriptural Knowledge Institution for Home and Abroad had not gotten off the ground. Not one penny had been raised for it, and George began to wonder whether he had made a big mistake. He decided to pray a very specific prayer. In his bedroom, George knelt beside his bed and prayed, "God, I believe you gave me the idea to start this organization, but I am not making any progress. If you want me to keep on with it, please send me 20 pounds to demonstrate this as your will. I'll use the 20 pounds to buy Bibles to give away. Amen." When he got up from his knees, George felt much better. The matter was in God's hand now, not his. If it succeeded, it would be because God had blessed it. If it failed, it would be because he had not. That evening, as the Muellers were sitting down to a meal of mutton stew, which seemed to contain more potatoes than meat, there was a knock at the door. When George opened the door, a woman from the Gideon Chapel stood before him. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir," said the woman, curtsying, "but I had something on my mind and I can't get no rest from it. Here, take this, and God bless you." She thrust her hand into her coat pocket and pulled out a white envelope. George reached out and took the envelope from the woman. The envelope felt like it had money in it, a pile of notes. The woman turned to walk down the steps. "Wait a moment, please," said George. "I have a question for you." The woman stopped. "What is it?" she asked as she turned around. "I was wondering exactly what it was you wanted me to do with this." "Well," she said, "whatever your need is." George frowned. The woman sounded unsure. "But did you have something in particular you would like to see done with it?" He probed. "Well, to be honest with you, if you don't need it urgently, I fancied the money going to buy Bibles for the poor." She gave a little smile. "Thank you," said George, stepping down to grasp her hand. "Thank you 100 times. As George closed the door and walked back into the parlor, Mary looked up at him. "What is it, George?" she asked. "In answer to my prayer," he said, his face shining with joy. "If I'm not mistaken, this envelope should contain 20 pounds. He tore it open, and sure enough, 4 5-pound notes fell out. "Oh, Mary," he exclaimed, "God is in this after all. We had better get ready. I know he is about to open the floodgates." And open they did. Within 6 months of receiving the first gift, the Scriptural Knowledge Institution for Home and Abroad was providing education for 120 children in Sunday school, 240 adults in day school. 1,000 Bibles had been purchased and given away, and 57 pounds had been sent overseas for the support of missionaries. George accounted for every halfpenny of the money in his meticulous records. Everything was recorded, from the principal's salary to the coal for the heaters. a chalk for the blackboard, and cricket balls for sports day. For the next year, things proceeded well for the Muller. George was still pastor of Gideon and Bethsaida chapels. He continued giving free breakfast to poor children. He oversaw the day schools and Sunday schools, and in his spare time he looked forward to being with his own 2 children, Lydia, who was now 2, and baby Elijah. But in June 1835, tragedy struck the family. Elijah, now 15 months old, became sick with influenza. George had visited enough sick children to know that his son was in grave danger. He read in his journal, May, "The Lord's holy will be done concerning the dear little one." The next day Elijah died, and it was a very difficult time for George, who missed his son terribly. But it was an even more difficult time for Mary. 4 days earlier, her father, whom she had been close to, had died. Now she was left with 2 funerals to arrange and attend in a single week. Later that same year, ill health crept upon George. George had never quite fully recovered from his stomach hemorrhage, and the old problem flared up again. Mary feared that her husband might die on her as well. The doctor made it clear to George that he needed a change of air if he was to have any hope of recovery. So with Mary and Lydia, George traveled to the Isles of Wight, where he spent his 30th birthday. For once, George had time to read, and he took advantage of it. He read the biographies of many great missionaries, including John Newton. He also took the time to read various newspapers. Each day, the consequences of the Poor Law Amendment Act seemed to make the headlines, and George could see why. Until 1834, the English government, through church parishes, had helped to support working people during times when they were unable to find a job. This support had kept many families from starving and allowing the dignity of returning to work as soon as they could find it. However, in 1834, that had all changed. In an effort to save money, the government had taken away the support provided for the working poor and replaced it with a policy stating that a family that could not support itself would have to go to the poorhouse. Even as George convalesced on the Isles of Wight, many new poorhouses were being built around the country. Poorhouses were awful places, and they were meant to be. The government wanted them to be as unattractive as possible to discourage people from applying. But without the extra financial support from the government, hundreds of working families, single parents, and orphans had nowhere else to turn, no matter how unattractive the poorhouses were made to be. The more George read about these places, the sadder he became. Husbands, wives, and children in the poorhouses were all separated and made to do the most menial work. For 12 or 14 hours a day, people were forced to crush horse and cow bones by hand, break rocks apart, and hand-grind corn. After a day's work, they flopped exhausted into their lice and flea-infested bunks, knowing they would have to get up the next day and do it all over again. In return for their labor, workers got 2 meals a day to be eaten in silence. All children 7 years old and up were made to work and were not allowed to see their parents, even if they were in the same poorhouse. The death rate in the poorhouses was high. Disease flourished in the horrid living conditions, and such a sense of hopelessness hung in the air that many people committed suicide. Every day on the Isles of Wight, George prayed for Henry Craig and the ongoing work in Bristol, where he longed to be. With the growing poorhouse situation, there was going to be more work than ever. As soon as George got better, he returned to Bristol on November 15th. He wrote in his diary, "We arrived safely. Last week we prayed repeatedly concerning the work of the Scriptural Knowledge Institution, and especially that the Lord will give us the means to continue and even enlarge the work." Within a short time of George's return to Bristol, 3 events occurred, any one of which was interesting, but when put together, they convinced George that it was time to begin the work for which he could come to be known around the world. The principal of the boys' school, run by the Scriptural Knowledge Institution, came to report on the school's progress. George knew each student in the school. He knew his likes and dislikes and what he hoped to be when he grew up. As a result, George was very interested in what the principal had to say. Since each student represented a hope for the future, George was upset when he learned that Freddie, one of the first boys to enroll and a good student, had been taken to the poorhouse. Children had fewer rights than anyone else in the poorhouse. Freddie would not be allowed visitors unless the matron approved them. He could not leave the poorhouse to go to school, and he could not own a private property, not even the Bible George had given him. George lay his head in his hands. "Why did it have to happen to Freddie?" he asked, directing his question at no one in particular. The principal responded, "It seems his father was dragged off to jail for petty theft, I think, and he died there in the same night. His mother was taken by cholera." Yes, thank you. Cholera. And his aunt took care of him. She waited until there was not a scrap of food left in the house, and then she marched Freddie down to the poorhouse so he could eat at least. "And it's so unfair," replied George. "What good is it opening schools if the children can't come because they have no food and no lodging?" The question hung in the air, and George was still trying to work out an answer to it when he visited Bill Wentworth, a member of the congregation at Gideon Chapel. Bill Wentworth pumped the bellows for the forge at one of the few factories that were springing up all over Bristol. Indeed, George was actually surprised to find him home, since Bill Wentworth seemed to be at work all the time. "Hello, Mr. Wentworth, may I come in?" called George through an open doorway. "Of course you can. Make yourself comfortable, and I'll have the missus put on a pot of tea for us," said Bill Wentworth, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. "What can I do for you, then?" "I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd visit. I'm surprised to catch you at home," replied George. Bill Wentworth nodded grimly. "Yeah, I'm glad for the job. Don't make any mistake about that, but the hours are awful long. Normally I work 16 hours a day, sometimes longer." He coughed hard when he stopped talking. "And do you have time for prayer and Bible study?" George asked. Bill Wentworth looked sheepish. "Not really. By the time I'm done with work, I'm not much good for anything but sleep, to be honest." "Have you thought of working less? You don't sound too healthy," said George. Bill Wentworth laughed scornfully. "If you don't mind me saying so, it's all very well to say that we say what we should be doing from the pulpit. It's quite another to have to earn a living for your family. Why, if I didn't work all the time, the whole family would be dragged off to the poorhouse, and we all know what that's like." George nodded. Many in his congregation had told him they worked such long hours that there was simply no time left for spiritual things. Still, George was not ready to give up on Bill Wentworth. "You have to understand that God has promised to supply the needs of all his children. Jesus told us to seek God's kingdom first, and he will add all the other things to us." "It's a fine idea, Pastor, but if I cut back on my hours, I don't think God will provide real things for me like shoes or food, do you?" Bill Wentworth looked a little embarrassed. "I mean, I know the Bible says he can do that, and you preach it and all, but I've never seen it for myself in real life, if you know what I mean." Again, George nodded. He did know what Bill Wentworth meant, only too well. He had heard the same argument 100 times before. Yes, the person believed that God could provide for him, but no, he was not prepared to take time out of his overworked life to pray and serve others and allow God to meet his needs. George longed for something or someone to point to, something he could show a person and say, "Look, he honored God, and God is looking after him in every way." Several days after visiting Bill Wentworth, George visited another member of the congregation. Unlike Bill, Elizabeth Brinston had a lot of spare time, and judging from her collection of books, George figured she must spend a lot of it reading. He sat in a well-padded chair, chatting with Elizabeth Brinston as the servant poured tea for them. "Please have a scone," Elizabeth Brinston offered, holding out a fine china plate with 5 scones neatly arranged on it. Each scone was spread with bright red raspberry jam with a dollop of Devonshire cream on top. "Thank you," said George. "These look delicious. I see you have a great many interesting books. Do you mind if I look?" "By all means," replied Elizabeth Brinston, "and if any of them interest you, feel free to borrow them." George put down his cup of tea and scone and stood to scan the bookshelf nearest him. Many of the books he had studied at school at the university. There were also ancient Greek and Latin texts, as well as some books of New English novelists. George reached up to pull out a small, dark, leather-bound book that had no name on its spine. "You might be interested in that book, Pastor. If I remember correctly, it was translated from German," Elizabeth Brinston said as George lifted the book from the shelf. Goosebumps ran up and down George's neck as he turned the book over and read the title. The volume was an English translation of the biography of A.H. Frank, a professor from Hale University who had started Hale. "Do you know the book?" asked Elizabeth Brinston. "As a matter of fact, I do," George replied. When I was a university student at Hale, I stayed in a room at the orphanage that started." Elizabeth Brinston's eyes sparkled. "Then you must take the book, Pastor Muller. I'm sure you will want to reacquaint yourself with the wonderful story." George lay in bed. Wait, am I not talking about it?
Keep talking.
George laid in bed that night, unable to sleep. He thought about George Wentworth
and all the men and women he was constantly encouraging to trust God. What or who was it that he could point to help them understand what he was talking about? He thought about Freddie, who at the very moment was alone in a room filled with men, some kind, some mentally ill, and some just plain evil. And he thought of the biography of A.H. Frank. How strange it was to find it in a private library in Bristol, England. Somehow George prayed, "Let me be a light to those around me. Let me help to find a way to reach the orphans before it's too late." In his wildest dreams, George Muller could not have imagined how his simple prayer would be answered. Okay, it's done. Yay.
Is this thing working?
Yeah.
Was I just really quiet or something?
I don't know. Was she really quiet?
Mom said that the volume was still low with the laptop kind of peaked out, so I figured we'd try this.
Okay. All right, well.
Just move you closer.
Yeah, that would have been a good idea too.
The levels look higher here.
Levels look higher here.
Message, yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so the next chapter is called The First Orphanage in Bristol. Ta-da! Hopefully Rose will be back to read that.
Well, next Sabbath, we'll see.
I hope.
We'll see. Intermission for popcorn and drinks, anybody? Alright, well, I figured we would talk more about prayer today, as my dad had kind of set that in motion. And I'd kind of tossed the idea around for a bunch of different things and talking more specifically about the stuff he had listed there, but what I am going to end up talking about can really cover any of the other three. As it seems like most of the things in the Bible about prayer seem to pertain to about all of those characteristics, if you really want to look into them. Alright, so I guess first we will go to Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 12.
Chapter 7,
Mhm.
verse 5.
Verse 7 through 12. Verses 7 through 12. Mhm. All right. It says, "Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. For every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth. And to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Or what man is there of you, whom if his son ask bread will give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish will give him a serpent? If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask him? Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets."
Okay. What does that mean?
Which
I
part?
asked for a new Cadillac. I didn't get it.
We had that conversation last night.
Yeah.
Hey, look here. It says, "Ask and you shall receive."
Knock and it shall be opened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What does that mean then?
well, as we're going to read here in a little bit, this is, well, tell you what, we'll go ahead and read it now. Let's go to 1 John 5:14 through 15. Pop on over to 1 John. So, understanding the relevance to not always getting what you want when you ask for something from the Lord.
And maybe we're asking for the wrong thing. First John what?
1 John 5:14 through 15. That's what I got there. Larry, you can read that one.
5:14.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is the confidence that we have in Him, that if we ask anything, listen, according to His will, He hears us.
Cadillac was not in your will.
Well, it's in my will, it may not be in His will.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, it all depends on now listen to me, it all depends on what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot ask for these earthly goods and really expect to get them.
It depends, I think.
It all depends on, now, he said, look here, I say, I need a brand new vehicle. Well, he say, okay, but it doesn't have to be a Cadillac. It could be a Volkswagen,
Mm-hmm.
you know. He says, and it might be a second-hand one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, no.
He'll give you, he says, I will meet your every need,
Mm-hmm.
not your every want.
Mm-hmm.
And here he says, if we ask anything according to His will,
Mm-hmm.
now what we have to know is what is His will. We can ask and it will be given to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. Second thing, if it's in accordance with His will, now we have to know what His will is.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to that in a moment.
See there? Leave me hanging.
Mm-hmm. Get there, just like my father, right? All right, Larry, I'm going to stop you there,
Okay,
and we're gonna jump back to what we're talking about here. Okay. We'll go back to Larry Land in a moment, but so yes, relevant to what His will for us is, which is something we'll have to understand as well. But I was also going to take us to James 4, and I can read that one real quick. James 4, 1 through 3. And this just kind of deals with the same kind of thing. I just wanted to add this to kind of give the other side of this same type of thought. But it also deals with not asking according to His will. It says, "From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and have not. Ye kill and desire to have, and cannot obtain. Ye fight the war, yet ye have not because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts."
I wrote a little note here in my Bible.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know if something is in God's will? How do I know that I am asking according to His will? Now, number one thing to remember, when you ask for something and it be in God's will, it has to be something that will also benefit someone else, not just yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you do that, then you're in God's will. If it's I, me, my, what I want, that's not God's will.
Mm-hmm. No.
It's only if it's going to benefit somebody else. The only way a Cadillac for me is going to benefit somebody else if I go pick them up and bring them to church. But that's not going to happen, okay?
Yeah, but even then the Lord can give you a different car to do the same.
Yeah,
Maybe He'll give you a
yeah,
bus
flag,
so you can bring a bunch of people.
Yeah. But at first, to be in God's will, remember this, to be in God's will, it has to benefit someone else,
Mm-hmm.
not just you alone.
Yeah, so the will of God is that we serve others and
There. He
love
said,
others.
I come to serve,
Mm-hmm.
not to be served, but I came to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That was in God's will. We follow His example.
Mm-hmm.
It has to benefit somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take care of them, He's going to take care of us.
Mm-hmm. Or especially serving His purpose. I mean, we were just reading in with George Muller here. You know, his prayer stood out kind of interesting because it was so specific, and the Lord answered it specifically.
But it was for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It was not for him.
Yeah.
It benefited somebody else.
Oh, of course,
it
He
will
was.
always benefit somebody else when you ask. Okay. but He will always take care of you and meet your every need. He said, I'll meet your every need. Don't worry about it.
And he said, your bread and your water will be sure.
Yeah.
I often relate it to an experience that my parents had and you may have heard my mom talk about it before, where she was, we were still living at that other house, and there was a time that they couldn't pay the power bill.
Yep.
And the power went out, and my mom said that she was angry with the Lord, trying to figure out why He would let this happen to our family. Like, didn't you say you would take care of us and provide for us?
But they had the money to pay the bill. It's just that it was either pay the bill or pay the tithes. And they chose the tithes. Now, she was upset because she done her part, and he didn't do his, or she didn't think he did his.
Well, she said that, after a little while of, I guess, wrestling with this, that she had ultimately realized that, hey, we do have food to eat, and we're okay,
We have a way to cook. That was after she'd done sat on the floor and cried.
I was going to leave that part out for her sake. I'm sure she's watching, so. But yeah, so asking things according to His will, and it's also relevant to things that will push His plan further along. And I figured we would read about some of those instances and kind of discuss them, where people had prayed for specific or miraculous things, and those things were answered in powerful ways. So we will jump to 1 Kings.
Who stole my pencil I had laying here?
Do you want a pencil, Larry?
I want my pencil back.
What kind of pencil was it?
I don't remember.
There's one laying right there.
Where?
Oh, there's a pen right here.
I had a pencil laying right here.
1 Kings 17. I got a pen here, Larry, but
I
I'm
won't be.
stubborn.
About yourself, I see.
Yeah, it's all you use. Larry, I'm offering to serve you by giving you a pen. You asked for a Cadillac, but I'm giving you a Volkswagen, all right?
Yeah, I want no pens.
Yeah. Lord isn't giving you a pencil, He's giving you a pen.
1 Kings 1.
1 Kings 17, verses 1 through 4. And there seems to be quite a few really cool things that have been prayed for and answered. These are just some of the significant and interesting ones that stood out to me. 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 1 through 4. And Cassie, would you like to read that one?
Verse 4, you said?
Verses 1 through 4. I like to just give the background so we know what it's leading up to.
Okay. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, and said unto Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith, and that is before the Jordan. And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there.
Mm-hmm. So I think that what's really interesting about this is just the miraculous working of God to overcome nature entirely. I mean, nature obeys Him naturally.
Now, this wasn't a prayer that Elijah was praying.
Mm-hmm.
This was a statement that he was given to, who was Ahab, that God was actually given the instructions to Elijah to give to Ahab.
Mm-hmm.
So this was not a personal prayer that he himself was praying.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I mention this is because the resolution to the prayer is mentioned in chapter 18, and so that's what we were going to jump to next.
You jump slow.
I jump slow. You calm down, Larry.
Oh,
look at that. The Lord answers prayer.
Cancel with no racer.
Oh, you're going to complain now?
You don't supposed to make mistakes.
That would be a used Cadillac?
Yeah, that's your used Cadillac, Larry.
Yeah, that's used.
With a
right.
flat tire and everything. Okay.
18.
Chapter 18, verse 37. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's not the one.
Which one?
42 through 46.
42,
1 Kings 18. So chapter 18, verses 42 through 46.
First what?
1 Kings.
Kings?
Mm-hmm. This is shortly after after Elijah had prayed and God called fire down from heaven. So that's another very amazing answer to prayer. But, within the confines of God's will, it was God's will that he asked this and that he, because this is the...
That's when he was up.
This is, see, again, it's for all the people.
Mm-hmm.
It will always be for someone else.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, and I'll touch on that real quick, just because it's interesting that I've seen this stand out a few times in the Bible, and I'll have to study more into it. But a lot of things seem to happen at the time of the evening sacrifice. When Daniel was praying for understanding about the time of captivity for the Jews in Babylon, it says that at the time of the evening sacrifice that Gabriel had come to him. Or, what would have been the evening sacrifice had they still been observing it in Jerusalem. But, okay. Verses 22 through 26.
You gave me a pencil.
I'm sorry, 40.
I was like, what?
42 through 46, my brain. Listening to a pencil sharpener go on in the background.
That's because you gave me a pencil with no...
Gave you the Cadillac without all the trimmings.
I told him he ain't supposed to make no mistakes.
Yeah.
I'll use the knife.
Oh, man. No, the pencil sharpener works. You're good. All right. 42, starting from there. So Ahab went up to eat and to drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel. And he cast himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees. And I think it's just interesting to note that as well, because... And Larry, what are your opinions on when it comes to how we should pray, whether we should pray standing or kneeling or things like that?
There is times that we should be showing reverence,
Mm-hmm.
but you can pray going down the road driving a car.
Mm-hmm.
You can pray
And you
continuously.
should frequently, considering how other people drive.
Yeah.
But
Pray without ceasing, they say.
There are times when you should pray reverently, like in a church or something, that you should kneel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily. God is not going to close His ears to you just because you're not on your knees.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course.
Well, you can beg better on your knees.
Yeah, I think there's really something to be said about humbling ourselves before God in this manner. When he's praying for something significant, it hasn't rained in quite a long time. 3 years. All the rivers are drying up, all the brooks and streams. It's becoming quite a wasteland.
Grass and everything.
And how long?
3 years, was it? 3.5 years?
3.5.
That's another interesting parallel to Daniel going on here. Well, that's why I was saying it's interesting, because the parallels are very similar. At the time of the evening sacrifice, and then but...
It all depends on how serious you want to get with prayer. Do I really want to catch his attention?
Yeah.
Get down on my knees.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the interesting thing, is it's kind of like it's really a humbling thing to do. It's to be able to go to God in such a weak state, because we associate kneeling with worship and with begging.
Yeah, but so many times, you know what we do?
Mm-hmm.
We use God like he's a genie. We rub a lamp or we rub our Bible and say, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. Without really being appreciative as to what he's already done for us in the past.
You get it, then you forget to give thanks.
Yeah, and we use him like he's a genie in a bottle,
Yeah.
Give me this, give me that, and that's about the extent of it.
But I think the Lord is also waiting for us to ask for the right things, but also to ask for powerful things, because like we read with George Muller, he gave George exactly what he asked for. Now, what if George had asked for more?
But he asked that as a sign to know that he was in God's will for other people. See, he had to know for sure that this is just not something he decided he wanted to do, but this is something that
the Lord wanted
God
him
wanted to do. But how do I know God really wants me to do it?
I guess it's
Father,
sensitivity.
will you give me a sign? Just let me know that I'm really in your will and I'm following what you say. And I want a specific now. Don't send me 19. Don't send me 21. I want 20. And that way I know for a fact.
Yeah. And the Lord definitely works in a lot of ways like that as well. You know, specifics. Who was it that put the fleece out? Was that Gideon? Gideon? Yeah, who had put the fleece out and asked specifically, Lord, you know, put dew on it. Twice, yeah. Well, I was like, well, maybe that was coincidence.
Yeah. See,
you know, that was kind of silly of me to ask for something like that. Lord, this time, no dew.
Do it this way.
Yeah, so sometimes that has been the thing to do. But I mean, if we understand the will of God, do we need a sign that what we are doing to serve Him is...
Sometimes we do.
Well, I think it's definitely easy for us to fall into, I guess, trying to start like a ministry that the Lord didn't want us in to begin with. You know, I think Sister White had made some statements talking to Adventists about not getting into the ministries that the Salvation Army already had, you know, because it's already being done and taken care of by a certain part of the body of Christ in that way, that, you know, we should focus on other parts of ministry. And so, like, one of our big focuses seems to be medical evangelism, stuff like that. I mean, just, there's so many interesting thoughts pertaining to that. And if jumping down so many different holes and forgetting where I'm at now.
I know.
That's okay. So we'll jump back here to the answer to Elijah's prayer here. So he's humbling himself. I mean, his face is between his knees. This is just as flat as you can be just about. Verse 43. And said to his servant, Go up now, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked and said, There is nothing. And he said, Go again 7 times. That's something that's very interesting to me. Does anybody have any thoughts on why he had to go up 7 times?
Why didn't it occur the first time? Perfect. Completion number.
It is a number of completion and perfection. But I think it also demonstrates one of the characteristics that my dad will be speaking about when he gets back about perseverance as well. Is that he prayed this, I guess, 7 times. Or at least send him back up 7 times, back and forth. But I just thought it would be interesting to consider why he had him sent up there 7 times.
That's not the first time either that he said 7 times.
Well, this
How about Naaman?
Who we talking, doing the talking here?
Elijah, I guess.
Elijah doing the talking? Who was he telling to go up 7 times?
His servant.
His servant.
His servant.
His servant. Mm-hmm. Now that's not the first time too. Now, how about Naaman when he
That
told him to
wasn't-
go and wash in the Jordan?
Mm-hmm.
How many times did he do it?
I don't recall.
7 times.
7 times? Oh yeah, that he had to go and wash.
That wasn't Elisha, was it? That
The servant?
Elijah. The servant was Elisha, wasn't
No,
it?
no. No.
They were together.
Elijah had already. No,
This
Elijah.
is before.
Huh?
This is before he went and met Elisha.
This was before he run into
Elijah.
Elisha.
Elijah was still a farmer. He hadn't even. I hadn't even met him yet.
Now,
anyway, he was wanting
his servant.
times.
See,
7 times.
There was people, young people that would follow these prophets, and they would go out and get food and stuff for them, and pretty much meet their needs and stuff. Just like I do Jerry, I'm here to listen to what he has to say. That's what they did. There'd be maybe dozens of them that would come there, and all they did was just sit around him because he was considered the master, and they would listen to what he had to say, and this is something they would pass on to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But they call them servants. So he sent one of them up there. He may have 4 or 5 of them married, but it just says one. that he sent up to top of the hill to look up into the sky.
Mm-hmm. And he said to his
What
servant,
was
"Go up
he
now."
looking up into the sky for?
He was looking for a cloud.
A cloud. Oh.
Because, see, he'd already
Oh,
said
that's right.
it's
He
going
was
to
praying
rain.
for the rain. Huh?
He said, it's going to rain now, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, which of course we understand as well has a lot of prophetic significance.
Anyway, this
Yes.
happened after he had prophets of Baal up there. You know.
They'd already killed the prophets of Baal. 450 of them.
And I'm just kind of wondering what the distance was that the servant had to go up and back 7 times.
He may
Yeah.
not have been very far.
Just
Maybe
up the
from
hill,
here to the
you know.
road. You know, just go up on the hill and see if you see
Yeah.
anything.
Check up there, nothing. Come back down, come back up.
7
Yeah.
times. That's
Mhm.
okay. That's
7 times.
But it makes you wonder, like, what would have happened had the servant only gone up 6 times?
There wouldn't have been no rain.
Mhm.
Well, it'd have been a new servant because they didn't have back.
All right, next guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it applies as well, like for how many times they circled Jericho and things like that. Like if they had only done it, how many times did they circle Jericho? 7 times. Yeah.
Well, 1 time each day
Mm-hmm.
for 6 days, and 7 times on the 7th day.
Wow. Yeah. But okay.
really interesting why they've done it that many times, you know. And then on the 7th trip around there, they just made a lot of noise shouting, you know.
Yeah, well, that's all the Lord needs is, I think it's also interesting to note that,
Sort of obedience, you
it
see.
requires their obedience for something to come about. And
See, it's going to come about regardless, but he just wants to check their obedience.
well, I don't know that the collapsing of the walls of Jericho would have happened had they not done it exactly to specification, because then it would have demonstrated likely a
Trust,
lack of faith.
like Moses.
Well, they was told
Breaking the law.
by God to do that, so
Yeah.
that's the reason it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goes back to the will of God. So it says here in verse 44, "And it came to pass at the 7th time that he said, Behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand. And he said, Go up, say unto
From
Ahab."
where?
From the sea.
Okay, but he went
cloud
up
out
and
of
he
the sea.
looked,
Mm-hmm.
and he saw what? Read that to me again.
There ariseth a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand.
Okay.
Okay. Where are we at? "And he said, Go up and say unto Ahab, Prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel, and the hand of the Lord was on Elijah. And he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel."
In other words, he's out running the horse.
Now that's an interesting thing to think about, because a lot of people think that this is like, they're both trying to book it back to Jezreel, and they definitely were moving along, but I don't think that it was at any superhuman speed. Obviously, it was quite a distance to run. I think it was 17 miles, I think is what they ran. But it was customary for kings to have someone run before their chariot in case of ambushes or mudslides, anything like that. And apparently from Mount Carmel to Jezreel, they had to pass through this valley that was prone to mudslides. And that there's actually another story in the Bible where it may have been Nahum, somewhere in the book of Nahum or something like that, where a guy lost his entire army because a mudslide went through the place that they were going to be passing through.
See, now it's something I knew I learned today.
Mm-hmm.
I can go home knowing I learned something.
But also, apparently, another interesting thing about Elijah was that he was from a region where there was another group of people called, I think, the Benoni, something like that. But historically, they were famous for being really good distance runners, kind of like the Ethiopians would today. I mean, they were known in that region for being really good at just running long distance. And that's the region Elijah came from. And so it also showed, though, Elijah's humility through the whole situation, because whoever ran before the king or in front of the king was more prone to have been killed or attacked if they were, or falling into some kind of disaster like a mudslide or something like that. So they were just the person that made sure the way was clear for the king and made sure it was safe. Just interesting thoughts. But all right. Let's go now to another miracle, and we'll talk about it in Joshua. This one's one you're likely all familiar with. Joshua chapter 10, verses 12 through 14.
What was that?
Joshua chapter 10, verses 12 through 14. You can read that one, Larry, if you like.
Then Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ahajalon. For the sun stood still, and the moon stopped till the people had revenge upon their enemies. How far am I going down?
Just to verse 14, I guess.
Okay.
Verse 14.
Is this not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. And there has been no day like that before it or after it. Thus the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel.
Mm-hmm. That's one of those really cool, very powerful prayer miracles.
Now we know for a fact that was a miracle.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
There ain't no questions about whether this is not a miracle or not. So why did it have to be such a noted miracle? What was the purpose of it being something that was well distinguished? Why? Why was it necessary?
It seems it was.
Why?
They were, at this point, they were hunting, or they were chasing somebody, weren't they?
They were fighting.
They were fighting. And they still needed, and the enemy was on the retreat.
And they hadn't completely done the job.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed more daylight to do the job, get the job finished.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, about another day.
Yeah. Yeah. Or another bit of time, another bit of sunlight. Interesting, too. I'd be interested to read what the book of Jasher says.
Did that change the time in the calendars?
A lot of people talk about that and argue that is what has changed the Sabbath. Well, that was hard to say.
Well, actually, not that this is actually proven or anything like that, but who was it that gave, the king wanted the sun to go back 15 degrees or whatnot? Hezekiah. Some people theorized that it corrected it. Some people theorized that it corrected this.
The timeline.
Back on schedule.
Space-time continuum.
Yeah, that's
Not that I know it's proven or not, but
that's an interesting thought.
that it was just it corrected itself, or God re-corrected it.
There's some studies that people have done and put out about those things that have shown that we haven't lost a day there. Something to that effect, or that it hasn't changed the Sabbath, because people think, well, now wouldn't that make Sabbath Sunday, since we lost it?
See, still it wasn't probably the 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Is all it was there, so it didn't make it a day.
Yeah.
Just completed the full 24-hour day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the world or nothing has changed since Jesus walked the earth.
Mm-hmm.
He kept the Sabbath, so you know what it is.
So anything that
And the
happened
Jews
before that
still
makes no
keep it.
difference.
Well, plus also, I think it's a matter of overthinking it a little bit too, because it just says that the sun and moon had stood still. Like, it doesn't say that somehow, that affected the timeline. or like that it affected the space-time continuum or something. It just means that the sun stood still. Like, it doesn't mean you lost a day. Like,
If it stood
still another day.
The earth stood still too.
Yeah, perhaps. Which is interesting to think about. Because if the
It
Earth,
would make more sense if the Earth actually stopped moving.
yeah, but you think we'd feel that on Earth? Because I think it's the fact that we spin that we stay stuck. Yeah, just turn back the dial a little bit.
He turned back the earth a little bit. He didn't. He made the sun go backwards, so he moved the earth backwards and let it go. Didn't
Yeah.
change a thing.
Yeah, I was about to say. I guess that's probably what he did basically. Sun was here, suddenly blip. It's back over here again.
He just turned the earth backwards a little bit.
But I mean,
Start again.
what a thing to ask for. I mean, and just imagine the faith it took to ask such a thing. That's something that is not physically possible as far as we understand. It's just something he kind of,
But when
Lord, this is what your will is for us. Like we know that this is what you have for us to do, but we need this to do it. So
Now, you
stand
see,
still.
Now look at this prayer now. Now, did he get down on his hands and his knees and he's prayed, Lord, I need this, please help me, please do this or anything? Or was he just standing there watching battle and saying, Lord, if I just had 12 more hours? Lord says, okay, you got it. See, it all depends on the circumstances as to what the prayer may be.
And I feel like it also depends on the relationship. I mean, he had a very close relationship with God, obviously, and he felt that he could ask that.
Sure. And it didn't have to be one of these deals to where he had to get down and plead and beg and cry and all this. He just said, Lord, I sure could use another 12 hours. Lord says, you got it. So I mean, it's that simple.
I can imagine it would have been quite a powerful thing to witness, though, because he's apparently saying this before the children of Israel, or he's saying it in the sight of Israel.
Yeah, but Israel was down there fighting now.
So
He was standing up here orchestrating the battle, and he just happened to say he saw how the battle was going, and he says, Lord, I need some more time. Lord says, for 12 hours to do, he said, that'll do just fine, they'll do it.
Yeah, what a miracle, though. Interesting implications, I would suppose. Something worth studying into as well. But he says there that no day like it, or there was no day like that before it or after it. So, yeah. Just amazing. Well, that could be in reference as well to, because did Joshua write Joshua?
Yes.
Well, if so, then he might just be recording this after most of his life has gone by, and he's going back and remembering the events of what he's done and what he's thought. Because, I mean, the wording, if he is writing it, almost sounds like he is writing this at the end of, at the end of all of his adventures. There was no day like that before it or after it. So I don't know whether that's relevant to his life or... Because didn't you say Hezekiah had also prayed kind of something similar?
Well, it was, I don't remember the circumstance, but Hezekiah basically asked to have the son go, or like, the king asked that to show, the guy, to show that God was listening, he asked God to, move the sun back 15 degrees, basically. Like, that was his way of throwing out the fleece, I guess.
Yeah.
Sun back for me.
Goodness. Now that is a sign right there.
Now, this is what my Bible says. It says the book of Joshua does not state who wrote it.
Yeah.
Joshua himself undoubtedly wrote portions of the book, since the 24th chapter, 26th verse states, then Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God. So he wrote it properly.
Yeah. Or if not, he did it via scribe and just kind of verbally gave him...
Because they said some of it describes his death and, the ceremonies with his death. So maybe
It's hard to write about your own death.
Yeah.
But you have a scribe that probably just, a secretary just...
Wrote everything down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I tell you,
to preserve the Word of God.
That's definitely a sign to ask for. They're thinking of Hezekiah thinking of asking for the sun to go back a couple
10
degrees.
degrees.
10 or 15?
10
I think
degrees.
it might
10.
be 10.
Yeah, I guess so.
Degrees.
Yeah, it's in Isaiah 38.
And he asks him, says, do you want me to let it go forward 10 degrees or back 10 degrees? He said, if I don't do nothing, it's going to go 10 degrees forward.
Dad says
So let's
that
go back 10 degrees.
Dad says that God could have moved the sun and moon at the same rate as the earth, making it seem like the earth was standing still.
Moved the sun and the moon at the rate of the earth?
Yeah, because
So that means he like started to rotate the
the moon
sun.
was in the valley.
Just takes a
Rotate the
wheel.
universe around the earth.
Yeah, I was about to say he must have been like flipping the whole solar system there. Because the sun doesn't normally rotate around the earth, but I guess he could have, I mean, because thinking about it in the realm of physics, not that God couldn't overcome
He didn't
physics.
have to,
He could have
it
just
might
slowed
appear to
time
be
down.
that way, but all he
Yeah.
had to do is just move the earth back.
Well, if we're spinning really fast right now,
25,000 miles per
so if
hour.
God just like stopped us, then at that moment everybody on earth would fly in the direction that we were spinning. You know?
We're moving how fast?
25,000 miles per hour.
Oh, come on.
The earth is moving at 25,000 miles per hour,
Oh,
and it's moving at 460,000 miles per hour around the solar system.
We're flying through space quite a speed, with no idea how we do that. Well, you know, besides gravity and all that. But
so what was happening was Hezekiah was sick,
Hmm.
and he was thinking he was going to die, and he wanted a sign that he would live longer. And it says, "And this shall be a sign unto thee from the Lord, and that the Lord will do this thing that he hath spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of the degrees which is gone down in the sun dial of Ahaz 10 degrees backward. So the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down." So like, he literally reversed time to prove that Hezekiah was going to live longer.
people who are out in the field, the sun just like clicks back over. What's
It
happening?
was over there.
Yeah.
That was daylight savings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real daylight savings. God clicks it back 10 degrees. That'll be a great sermon next time we have a daylight saving thing happen. What was it though? Oh, it made me think of a story though with Hezekiah asking for that kind of sign. I think may have been Alexander the Great, or one of those conquerors, famous. It was either Napoleon or Alexander. But there was like a time of year where they would allow people to come to him, and he would grant anything that they asked.
Oh,
Yeah. And they would grant anything that he asked, no matter what it was. So most people would come to him and they would ask for the simple things, expecting that was reasonable and logical. They would say, I need food, I need medicine, whatever, I need this and that. But apparently one guy had come and he asked for a palace, a fully furnished palace, complete with servants and food and everything, because apparently he had a lot of friends and wanted to be able to host large parties and things like that for his friends. And so the servant went and relayed the message to Alexander after much reluctance, trying to convince the guy that what he was asking for was way over the top and too crazy, But he said after a little while of pondering it, that he just said, granted. So he granted this man a palace and everything that he had asked for, and he said that everybody comes here asking me for things that are so simple to give them. But this one man asked me for something that he knew no one else could give him. And he made me feel like a king for the first time.
We have not because we ask not.
Mm-hmm.
That's from that prayer book, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
We got this really good book from a friend of mine, an old classmate, called Daring to Ask for More. And that's one of the things they tell you about in that book.
That's exactly what it is. See?
Well, it talks about, how nowadays we ask for things and we don't expect these things to happen.
Lord, if you want to.
Like, we don't really-
if it's okay,
If it's in your will, we use if it's your will as a way to be if it doesn't happen, then obviously
Wasn't
it
in
didn't
your will.
happen.
It's an easy letdown,
Yeah, so it's nobody would actually ask the mountain to move nowadays, or back in the old days, they'd be
Well,
like, hey, move.
This is a good time to tell about Edna's furnace.
Yes.
Or her heat pump. Okay. Now, as y'all know, her gas range went out. Then her microwave went out. Then her water or her washer went out. Now we're only talking about this year in a month's time or so, you know. And then last Sabbath went home and the heat pump was out. So we prayed, Lord, there's no way we can take and put this in. So my little brother suggested we'll call social services and see if they can do something under an emergency condition. So in the dish, she called. They sent her a letter and said, okay, so the next day, and said, we'll approve $500 to fix your heat pump. The man comes up and checks it. The compressor's gone out on the heat pump. It's cheaper to put a new heat pump in than it is to put a
new compressor
in. So we're looking at $5,100. Money we do not have. Money I can't get from Jerry. Okay.
You hear that, Dad?
Now listen to this. Now listen. Now we're talking miracles here, okay? So he turns the paper back into his boss. His boss calls in and said, "Looky, this is a miracle. If anybody says it's a miracle, it's APCO." Okay. Now here he is, and so he calls her and he says, "Looky, we've talked to APCO, and APCO says we'll pick up the bill for $5,100.
Wow.
Now they come yesterday to put the heat pump in, right? We're sitting here, and Edna says, "Can you help me move this? They got to put something in the hallway here." So I go down. I says, "What are we doing?" They put her a new furnace in, a brand new furnace, brand new thermostat, and a brand new heat pump. Right, about $8,000.
Wow.
APCO picked it up. If APCO picks it up, it's a miracle. Okay.
That is true.
Yeah.
But
Our bills are so high.
Edna said, "How in the world are they going to pay for this?" I said, "Edna, the state of Virginia is going to pay for this for you, so don't worry about it."
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Edna says, "Thank everybody out here."
Yeah.
That's on APCO because they paid the bill by right $8,000. New energy efficient heat pump, furnace, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome, Larry. You're welcome.
Now that's a miracle. Now you tell me that could ever happen again. Not likely.
Well, anything's possible with the Lord.
See, that's what I'm saying. But it had to be a miracle.
I mean, did you ask the Lord for a new heat pump and all that, or
I
was it
just asked him to get it fixed for her.
And the Lord said, "Okay, you just watch me."
See, and then I turned around after he fixed it. I'm amazed at the fact that he actually did it. Not because I don't have faith, but I was amazed that he actually did it. Not only did he do it, but he did it better than what I asked. Just like that king right there, just like Alexander gave this year, because the individual asked.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing about some of these amazing miracles that took place was, nothing.
I don't want to push my luck or anything, but still looking for a stove and a washer. So I mean,
You know, Larry, this is why the Jews got into such trouble.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, the manna's okay, but
I love some,
or the desert's nice, and we're out of slavery, but you could throw in a wood stove. The cloud and the pillar by night is great, but parting of the Red Sea is all right. But
we still had to walk across.
Yeah. It's amazing what we do.
I'm telling you now. See there now. You know what really gets me is we ask for a prayer to be answered, and then he answers it, and then we're amazed at the fact that he actually did it. And then he did it better than what we could even ask to start with. Ain't no way on this earth I would have ever asked for that. I would not have asked for it because I knew it could never happen. I just asked for it to get fixed, and what happens?
Oh, we have little faith.
It is, that's a fact.
And
I knew he'd fix it. I just didn't know it was going to be this good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything that our Father does is excellent.
Perfect.
Perfect.
That must go to show you how much He loves us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even realize. We take it all for granted.
Yeah. I mean, He takes care of everything that we've ever needed, and oftentimes He gives us a lot of things that we want, as long as He knows they won't hinder us from Him. You know, it's the reason why so many people would pray, Lord, send me $1 million, and He doesn't, because He knows that would destroy you spiritually. You know, like my dad talks about, he may have talked about him just last weekend or something, where he had this friend who was an evangelist who was really into like the multimedia stuff, and apparently was an excellent evangelist, and was just really good at what he did. But he ended up getting into multi-level marketing stuff and making it big in that, making like $1 million his first year, and ultimately that led him away from the Lord.
Away from His faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the reason we have not is like he said in James, you know, we have not because we're not asking for the right thing, you know.
And you see, here, let's go back to another thing too. You see, whenever I prayed, I wasn't praying for myself. I was praying for Edna.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be in God's will. You got to be doing be a servant.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking for this for Edna, so He gives it.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all probably experienced some amazing answers to prayer. You know.
Boy, I did.
Yeah.
My son, you know, comes to me and says, I'll quit smoking if you will. I said, okay, I'll do that, which I was going along with him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
So you
thinking
didn't think
he
you
was
was
going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him I'd quit. But whenever I said my prayers before I went to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
I told him, I just said to myself, now I'll just smoke when I'm on the road. I will smoke around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the Lord, I don't intend on smoking, but I do pray that you'll help my son quit smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And who quit? The next morning, I had no desire to smoke or anything. It left me.
Wow.
And that was it's been about 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I quit. My son didn't, but he did quit a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's because God was using you as an example, showing that it could be done.
I mean, for me to quit, I'd done quit 20,000 times before, you know.
Every time it was done, you quit.
I might quit for a day or two, but then I'd be right back again. But this time, you know, I just
No desire.
Hey, I don't intend on smoking, but I pray that you'll keep my son from smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's right. I mean, just the next morning I got up, never thought about it, didn't have no desire or anything, and it had to be from God, because I wouldn't have quit.
You know, but that's the amazing thing too, is you had the faith and the courage to ask such a thing of God. You know, and it's funny that we approach prayer so reluctantly to, you know, like what we should even ask Him, because we either feel like what we're asking for isn't right or isn't appropriate, which we could then pray to have the knowledge to ask for the right and appropriate things. You know, I mean, there's always something that we need to be asking God or praying for someone or something.
I mean, them things was killing me. I mean, I couldn't go. I had the worst habit of smoking, you know.
Mm.
Just about like my dad, you know, one right after another.
Mm.
You could follow me down the road and no ever turn a make from the cigarettes going out the window.
Maybe what we should really look at this thing, and maybe we shouldn't necessarily pray for ourselves in the sense that, Lord, I want this, or Lord, I want that. maybe we should rely on others to pray for us to have what He wants us to have, and we should be doing the same thing. That way, that's really being a real true servant.
Yeah, I believe the Bible does say something about praying for one another.
It does.
It does.
But what I'm saying is, just completely and totally stop praying for the things that we want, and then if the Lord wants us to have it, somebody else will pray for us and we get it.
Well, this says, it's James 5:16. It says, "Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that ye may be healed." You know.
Well, that's what happened when I was healed when I prayed for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, but the Lord is so good in such awesome ways. He answers us in ways that we never thought were possible, but He also likes to give us things that we really desire as well.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Not only is He going to meet our needs, He said, look, I will meet your every need. Mm-hmm. Don't you worry about it. I'll meet your every need.
Then again, it's needs, not wants. Mm-hmm.
But He also meets a lot of your wants.
He goes ahead and He meets our wants.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Says, if you want a blessing, pray for someone else, and then stand close to them. Fallout is just as fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. That's an extremely good point.
Mm-hmm. I used to joke about that kind of thing. My friend Jem, he was my classmate in AFCO. He's a complete full-time missionary. He doesn't work to earn any. Well, I mean, he does if the opportunity arises, but like he's just entirely sent by the Lord in every other direction that he could possibly go. But in AFCO, when we were doing our studies, people would just randomly do things like give him money or send him money because they were impressed to. One guy gave him a completely new $2,000 camera. I mean, like, the Lord just blessed him with things that the Lord, like, enjoys blessing His children with, because He knew these were things that he would be using and things that he would like, but wouldn't go to his head and distract him. You know, and so I used to joke with him that I was like, you know, it's really a nice thing being best friends with the favorite of the Lord. You know, just be able to receive the fallout blessings.
That's exactly right. That's a good point. Extremely good point.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for others and just.
But you know, the Lord does desire to give us the things that. Well, I mean, He obviously does give us all the things that we need because we're here, and then some. But you know, like when he's talking in when Jesus was talking in Matthew 7, and he's paralleling, like, you know, if your son asks for bread, would you give him a stone? You know, like if we who are evil and sinful know how to give good gifts, how much more does God know how to give good gifts?
Perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, so every gift that we receive from God is truly an opportunity that, I mean, if we see it as a negative, we are not seeing the perfection of the gift that He is giving us. I mean, like He says that we should count it all joy when we fall into trials and temptations, you know, because we know that God is working in our lives. And so, like, these things are gifts from God. And but when it comes to praying for yourself, I don't think it's a bad thing to pray for certain aspects of yourself. Like, Lord, you know, lead me in today's study. You know, like, help me to do this, work through me. Even then, it's not necessarily asking for yourself, it's asking for God.
But it's also going to bless someone else, you see, when you do that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, I should not sit and pray, Lord, I sure like to have a Cadillac Escalade. I mean, I should sit back and say, well, I sure hope Jeremiah and them and Elijah and all these, Kenny and them, I hope they pray for me a new Cadillac.
Yeah.
You see, I shouldn't be praying for things that it's not going to benefit others. Always pray for things that will benefit someone else. And He will take care of you and what you need. Don't
Absolutely.
worry about it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I know, though, that there's been several things that I've asked for throughout my life as well that the Lord has answered, like, just recently. You know, with my business, it's kind of like a numbers game. However many students is how much ever, you know, you can provide for yourself. So I was just praying a couple days ago that the Lord, and basically I asked it in such a way that I said, Lord, if you see fit to send me more students, you know, like, I would love that. And also if you could make sure that you can lead me in the direction that I can effectively minister to those students through what I'm teaching, then I would love to have more people to take on.
See, again, it's for the benefit of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You may reap the benefits of it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually for somebody else.
Yeah, well, the beauty of it is that just the next day, I had gotten a message from one of the ladies who teaches at the elementary school in Floyd, and this week they have like this Go Week thing or whatever, like where they're talking about getting kids interested in athletics and things that are offered in the local community. And they called me to come up and do like a demo and get kids interested in gymnastics and parkour and stuff like that. And we're gonna be going and doing this for 140 kids.
Is that
So,
this Tuesday?
yeah, that's this Tuesday.
Am I going as well?
Yeah, you can. But like those are just the funny things that, like, just the other night or just earlier today, I was thinking about it and contemplating how, like, the Lord answered my prayer very quickly, actually. But I said, Lord, I'd like to take on more people. And he says, okay, well, here's an opportunity to take on more people.
A lot of more people.
So then I was just praying for the ability, because, having that moment to show them something, I don't want them to just see a skill that I have to offer. I want them to see the characteristics and love of Christ through what I'm doing. And so that's...
See, again, it's for the benefit of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Prayers will always be answered if it is for the benefit of someone else.
It will not return void. That's what the
It
Bible
says,
says.
cast your bread upon the waters, and it will not return to you void.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I don't know, anybody else have any...
But it's when we sit, and I think where we mess up is when, and of course I'm teasing about the Cadillac,
Mm-hmm.
though I'd like to have one.
Yeah. The Lord,
But-
just in case.
yeah. But what I'm saying is, there's nothing wrong with us asking for something for ourselves. We may not get it, okay? It all depends on whether he wants us to have it or not, and how it's going to affect us. But when he says ask, being in God's will, he means you take care of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You take care of everyone else, and I'll take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it boils down to. Do all you can for somebody else, and he'll take care of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course there's lots of aspects that go into it, like my father will be going into when he comes back, relating to, perseverance, possibilities, and power. Obviously, like, there are certain things that we do need to persevere in prayer. There's a very famous quote from, I think it was Martin Luther, who said that I have so much to get done today that I need to spend at least 3 hours in prayer. And we don't think like that much anymore. To where
I'm
we're
too busy to pray.
Yeah, but I mean, it deals with relationship. Like, prayer is such a beautiful thing that it is a chance for you to bring your petitions, your thoughts, and your feelings to the Lord, and to have things answered and works done in your life, to intercede.
Why do we always, every time we go to the Father, every time we go to Christ, why is it we're going there asking for something? Why can't we just sit down
Talk to
and
him.
have a conversation with him,
Mhm.
because he's our friend and our brother? Why can't we just talk about to him and just tell him what we think, and just sit there and carry on a conversation?
Mhm.
Why is it every time we have to ask him, oh, by the way, it was good conversation, but I want this, or I want that, or I need this, or I need... I mean, that just destroys the conversation you just had.
It really kind of destroys the relationship, and that's what a lot of prayer is. And prayer goes hand in hand with Bible study.
Do not bother my pencil.
Making sure his pencil stays safe.
But we're it seems like we're always using him as a genie in a bottle.
Mhm.
Rub that thing and we get what we want. That's
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it tends to boil down really to relationship. Like, that was my experience when I was in AFCO, was I started praying regularly every morning and every night. but I would just go out on the balcony of our apartment and would have verbal communication with God as I'm talking with you, and would just literally tell God everything about my day and what I did and what I thought about, and even though He already knows all that,
Sure, but
He wants to hear it, you know, because that's how you further relationships, is you talk to Him, you know, and it's like if you don't talk to Him, even though you know He knows everything, there's still, like, it's, you know, it's just like saying, well, you know, my wife knows I love her, so I just never tell her I love her, you know, because she knows.
Hey, I told her once.
Yeah.
If anything changes, I'll let her know.
Yeah.
You know, type deal.
And so that's essentially how we're handling our relationship in prayer with God, when all we do is come to Him to just say, Lord, I need this, I want that, and
Let's quit asking for all this stuff, and let's just carry on a conversation with Him. Let Him know that we're there because we want to be there, and because we love Him, and that we don't necessarily have to ask for something every time.
yeah.
I mean, that's where the relationship feels. Can you imagine? Every time I come over here and I see Jerry, I ask him for something. It's going to get to the point he's going to say, "Good Lord, how much here comes Larry again? Wonder what he wants this time." See, that's exactly the way it is.
Yeah.
But I don't do that. I just come here and pester him and everything, and he's okay at that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, so likewise, that's how our relationship with the Father should be.
It has to be that way. If you can call it a relationship, that's the way it has to work. Anything other than that, you're using him as a genie in a bottle. You're just there to get something.
Well, think of it this way, too, is that I would say likely anybody that we read about in the Bible that was used by God in a mighty way, one of their best and most powerful resources was prayer. I mean, Paul, every time he wrote a letter to someone, he said, we're praying for you. You know, we're praying for you. We're thinking of you. We're praying.
But you see, it's always for somebody else. It's always for somebody else.
I mean, if we're to be like...
Never for himself.
And, well, I mean, Jesus was our ultimate example in that, and that everything that he did and prayed for was really not for himself. It was for the will of God.
Never, ever.
For the healing of people.
The only prayer whatsoever, ever, was when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he asked that the cup be taken from him. But then he asked, not my will, but your will be done. All the other prayers throughout his 33 and a half years, he was always praying for other individuals and taking care of them. He said, I came as a servant, not to be served. So you see, if we followed his example, I would be praying for you to get what you want. I would be praying, and then if the Lord gives it to you, that's fine. If He doesn't, then He's already looked down the telescope of time. He says, "No, this is not really good for him. Maybe instead of giving him 30 or 40 new students, I'm going to give him 4. Because I'm going to work him up a little bit at a time." See?
Yeah.
Every prayer is not going to be answered exactly the way you want it.
Oh, no. No. Well, I don't know. Sometimes, if it's really within the confines, obviously, the sun did stand still for Joshua.
But that was for the people. That was for the fighting men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, it was for the glory of God too. So that's what really counts.
But I mean, so how often? I mean, this is kind of like a rhetorical question. Like, how often have we actually spent even just an hour praying? I mean, we feel like we have so little to say to God that literally we have 5 minutes to ask Him for what we want, and we think that's sufficient for our relationship.
Maybe we shouldn't look at this thing as being a prayer to start with. I see a prayer as me asking for something I want and need or whatever, you know.
Making a petition or something,
Yeah.
you know, asking.
I think instead of saying us going to Him in prayer and doing all this, I think we'll just go to Him and have a conversation.
Let's go to the Lord in conversation.
Yeah, let's just go to the Lord and have a good talk.
Hey,
let's
Lord.
just sit down and talk and see how things are going, see what He thinks about this. Ask Him what He thinks about things. Ask Him if we should be doing this or that. Kind of just like you would if it was your own daddy. Talk to Him, you know, and you'll get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you need something, if you're praying for somebody else, and you're putting a request out there, a petition out there, sure, make that a prayer. All this other stuff was just talking to him and having a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between having a relationship and having a prayer.
Yeah. I think it would do really well for all of us to set a time for conversation with God. You know, to have at the least 15 minutes with Him in the morning or something. You know, even if we have to wake up earlier before our activities and before we go and do things, it would benefit all of us to have that conversational time with God.
There's not a morning and there's not a night I don't pray for you. Pray for all of them. But then throughout the day, I'll just be sitting there doing this or doing that. And you may cross my mind. I'll say, like the jury especially, Lord, keep him safe. You know, I need him. Don't, you know, protect him, him and Rose. And I mean, it just may be something that just comes up through the day. It may he just may bring it to my mind, you know. But that's just a conversation we have throughout the day. I pray at night and I pray at morning, but I have a conversation throughout the day.
Yeah.
All day.
All right. Well, it's 12:01 now, so I guess we'll.
Is that good or bad?
I guess that's okay. So I guess we'll try to have prayer, conversation with the Lord to close out this little bit of study time, and after we eat and all that, we can resume chatting about it. Because prayer is a very interesting topic. Okay, we ready to pray? Guess so. Lord, thank you so much for the privilege of prayer and for the awesomeness that we have to be able to come and talk to you and to speak with you in such a verbal and personal way. And that even though we don't always verbally hear you back, we feel like we do in a lot of ways when we spend time talking to you. You've said that your sheep hear your voice, and that is only done through studying your word, and we can only understand what we study through prayer. So we ask for the ability to understand and to reason through the Scriptures, and to be able to apply the things that we learn to our lives, and to grow continually. Lord, we want to be closer and closer to you, so we invite the Holy Spirit to live in us to the best of its ability, that it can purify and cleanse us and make us a fit vessel for the Spirit of Jesus. And that whenever we go throughout our day, whenever we do what we do throughout the rest of this upcoming week, that the glory of your Son might show through in our work and in our lives, and that people may not see us and think how wonderful we are, but that they might see the love of Jesus in us. And so, Lord, as we have had a great discussion together in regards to prayer, and even though it has been everywhere, we ask that you can bless the study in such a way that we can all have gotten something from it and can take away from it, and to grow in our own personal prayer lives with you. Lord, and as you have blessed us at this time in the morning, we also want to ask that you would bless the food that has been prepared for us, that we can eat together and commune and enjoy each other's company. And of course, Lord, for those that are still around, we ask for our parents and for our families and those that are watching, that you would bless them and keep them and watch over them as well, and continue to build all of us up in the body of Christ until your coming. These things we ask and pray in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Alrighty, I guess that's it.
And back to you, Jeremy.
And back to you, Jeremy.